Welcome to the second season of the Dr. Ramsey Show. Our intention is to deliver educational content and useful information on holistic health and our clinic, Revitalize Functional Medicine. To stay up to date with our weekly episodes, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Dr. Ramsey Show. I've got a really special one for all of you because all of you know that I wouldn't be successful if it wasn't for this man. And I want to introduce you to him because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't know anything I'm doing. And I feel very confident with what I'm doing because of you, Dr. Rouzier. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've been my teacher for over 20 years.
Wow, has it been that long?
Yep.
Oh my goodness gracious.
It's been over 20 years. You're the only educator who I know that uses the research to teach. There's no opinions.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. You know, it's like everyone will ask me my opinion, but as you know, when I lecture, when I teach, I don't really give an opinion. I sort of give a dialogue, but it's pretty much, you know, okay, here's a study that says this, here's a study that says that, here's a study that says this, here's a study that says that. And then you put, okay, now they've got 20 studies that say and show this. Why is it everyone doesn't do this? And why is it that everyone wants to do something different or the opposite?
Right. I mean, it's so true.
It's really easy. It's really simple. It's like, and everyone wants, you know, they think, oh, you're a genius at it. No, I'm not a genius. I'm regurgitating what the medical literature and science tells us we should do. It's real simple. I just copy it. I'm a copycat. It's real simple. It's real easy.
However, our colleagues don't appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, I know. Well, you know, they don't understand that they don't understand. And as I say, you know, they'll never understand that they don't understand. And we understand they don't understand, but they don't understand that they don't understand, which is sort of what this, you know, little Zoom webinar is about, is to try to explain, you know, why they don't understand. And why is it that they don't do that? How is it that it falls between the cracks? And that's confusing for even doctors to know and understand, let alone patients to know and understand.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But the more doctors say negative stuff about what we do, the more they look bad to our patients.
well, sure. You know, there was somebody on the forum that just posted that said, you know, they lost a patient to their PMD because the PMD scared the patient and told the patient that, you know, that they're going to cause harm by it, and, you know, yada 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 yada. And of course, it was a nurse practitioner that was upset that she lost the patient, but she's, you know, frustrated that the PMD has that power to then scare the patients. And, you know, then I turn around and I say, well, you know, if you're scared and you don't understand it, then go with what your doctor says. But how is that working out for you? Well, it's not. What is he doing for you? Well, nothing. And what is he doing for you that's really doing any good? Well, nothing. Is there anything that he's doing to help you? Well, no, nothing. Is he giving you some medications and some drugs for your diabetes and cholesterol and all these other things? Well, yeah, he is. Okay, so how's that working out? Well, I keep getting weight and I'm more fatigued and I'm more frustrated and I can't get, okay, well, if that's working out for you, then you keep doing that.
Yep, that's right.
And when you decide that it's not working out for you and that you finally understand, okay, I'm at wit's ends, they haven't done anything, they haven't helped me, other than tell me, no, I shouldn't optimize my hormones. And it's not working. And it's like, okay, well, then you got to go to plan B. If plan A is not working, then you got to go to plan B. And I tell them, you know, you can do plan A when you get tired of it and frustrated and you see that it's not working out for you, you know, then I'm happy to see you and treat you and help you. And I've made a career. I was stealing patients from other doctors because the other doctors don't help them, and I do, but the patient doesn't understand it. And I tell the patient, you know, as soon as you come back, as you know, and say, well, my doctor says, I'm just going to say, no, well, you do what your doctor says. If that's working out for you, then you do that. When it's not working out for you, and you finally realize that, okay, I can't live like this, you know, this is not working out. Then come back. I'll be happy to treat you. And here I'll show you all these studies and all these papers and all these articles that your doctor does not know or understand. Well, how come he doesn't understand it? Because he doesn't read, and he doesn't research, and he doesn't go to courses. And then you can read it for yourself, and then you can decide what you would like to do based on, okay, here's all this science, this literature. It's really simple. Just read the abstract and the summary, and then you can decide what you want to do, and you'll understand why we do what we do based on all these studies that show that it works. This is what we do. This is why we do what we do. Well, how come my doctor doesn't know that? I can't answer that. He just is not educated. Well, you know, no, he didn't go past his residency. He didn't do anything else.
I know. You've answered my question, which was, why do most doctors think what we do is wrong?
Well, you know, to be honest with you, you and I didn't know this at one time either.
Exactly.
And I
100%.
remember, when you first came, 20 years ago, you had gone to A4M and were sort of taught differently. And then you came and listened to me and was going, this guy is, he's saying the complete opposite of what we were taught. He's saying the opposite of what A4M says. Yeah, but what he's talking about but he provided all this evidence-based literature and all these studies and all this review, and it sort of makes sense. And then you did it, and you finally said, okay, now that I've done it, now that I've seen it, now I've seen it work, it's like, okay.
It makes clinical sense. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I do that.
And you know as well as I do, no doctor has the time to put into this like we do. I mean, if someone's I don't want to say a endocrinologist because they should know the research, but let's say gynecologists and urologists, they don't know it because they're doing surgeries. But they scare my patients, as you know. I've told you this so many times.
Yeah. Well, and when they scare the patients, I'm saying, okay, well, keep doing what your doctor tells you to do. Mm-hmm. And when you're tired of it, and then you realize that they're not helping you, and then here, read all this information, read the booklet, read these studies, read what I give you, and then you can decide for yourself. And then, well, what you gave me makes perfect sense. Why doesn't my doctor know this?
Exactly.
That's a good question. They don't, because there's no venue for them to go to learn all of this.
That's true.
And then when they add sort of, add fuel to the fire that they scare the patient, sort of as a last ditch effort to try to talk the patient out of it. And I tell the patients before we even see them now, if you go to your doctor and tell your doctor what we're doing, or, you have questions, you ask your doctor and the doctor gets an opinion, you come back and say, my doctor says, we are done. We are so done. We are so finished. We are done. I'm not going to argue with your doctor. I'm not going to review it. Why did you come to me? Well, because you're the expert. Why don't you go to your doctor? Because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's not the expert. Okay, so you came to me because I'm the expert, but then you want to listen to your doctor. Well, yeah, but you get scared. Why did you tell him? Well, I thought he should know what I'm doing. Well, he didn't like that. Okay, well, then you come back and say, my doctor says we're done. We are absolutely done. Goodbye, good luck, best wishes. When you want to come back, I'll be happy to treat you, but don't come back and say my doctor says. And as soon as you start to tell your doctor or discuss it with them, they will not understand it. They will not like it. If a doctor's not up on it, they're down on it, and they're not up on it, so they're going to be down on it. When they realize that the doctor's down on it, but nothing is working, okay, then they have to go to plan B. And then when they finally do plan B, like you did, and you say, wow, this really works, and it's evidence-based medicine, it's like, okay, now why were we doing what we were doing before? Why were we taught that way? Why did we do it that way?
Exactly.
It's too difficult. It's too long of an explanation to explain why we were taught incorrectly or wrong, and why we don't look at the most current literature and science. This is something, as you know, that you and I don't make this stuff up. We basically take our own literature and our own science and do what our literature and science tells us to do. We optimize thyroid, we optimize estradiol, we don't use synthetic hormones, we use testosterone, we use all the other hormones, we optimize the levels that you had in your youth, whatever that means. And the higher your level of hormone, the better your response, the better you'll feel and function. And this is what the literature and the studies say that we should do. Then why don't we simply do that? It falls between the cracks and the patients don't understand it, which frustrates them. So I hope now, it's been a long-winded answer as to, why don't the doctors understand it or do this? They don't. It just falls between the cracks.
I agree. I agree. But our patients know that we know what we're talking about, and they're very comfortable coming to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what you have to do is educate your patients, right? So there's another one that I wanted you to have you comment on, because I feel like I'm the only one in Arizona that prescribes oral estradiol, because everyone's afraid of oral estradiol. They think we should do creams instead of an oral capsule because of the risk of blood clots, strokes, and heart attacks.
Yeah, sure. Well, using a male analogy, the Ford Pinto was a bad car. If you ran into the back of it, it exploded. Well, does that mean that all cars that you run into the back of them explode when you run into them? No, it was only the Pinto. Well, you're going to extrapolate that means all other cars will do the same. Well, no, not other cars do that. It's only the Pinto that does it. Why are you thinking that all the other cars do it? Well, because if it happened to the Pinto, you have to assume that all of the cars are going to explode when you run in the back of them. No, you can't make that assumption. You have to then prove it. If you observe that, the cars explode when you run in the back of them, sure, then you can make that connection. But no, you can't extrapolate. You cannot assume. So having said that, synthetic hormones that are commonly prescribed for menopause, Premarin and Provera, cause blood clots, heart attacks, strokes. And as a result, bioidentical hormones became very, very, very popular. But we now know that it's really the oral Premarin and Provera that goes through this first pass effect of the liver that increases clotting factors that can cause a heart attack, strokes, and blood clots. But people don't understand that all the studies where they looked at estradiol causing that did not show that estradiol caused any of those problems that Prem Pro did. But everyone wants to extrapolate and assume that, well, oral estradiol is the same and just as harmful as oral Premarin, and it's not, because all the studies showed that not only is it not harmful, it's safe. It's the Prem Pro that was harmful, and don't extrapolate that to oral estradiol. Well, then, okay, well then, if it's an issue, then why don't you just use the transdermal cream or a patch and be done with it? Well, sure, you can, absolutely. Use the transdermal cream or the patch and avoid the oral estradiol. Problem solved. Let's move forward. We're done. But as you well know, and that's the easiest and simplest thing to do. And I've told patients that, okay, if you can't conceptualize and you can't get it out of your brain because you read or you heard that oral estradiol somehow is harmful or bad,
stay off it.
Then don't use it. Then use the transdermal. That's fine. Okay, great, good. I'm glad we're on the same page. Yeah. Why did you come to me in the first place? Because you're the expert, right? And the expert says this, but you don't want to listen to the expert. Well, no, that's not what I read or I heard. I think, okay, well, then you need to go back to your doctor. You need to take that transdermal cream. But the problem is, as you well know, sure, you can take the transdermal cream or patch. That's fine. But the oral estradiol is what protects against the heart attacks, and it is the best one to reduce the incidence of cardiovascular disease because of the oral effect going through the first pass effect and the effect it has on the lipids and lipoproteins and apolipoproteins that you do not get with the transdermal. So sure, everyone should be on a transdermal to prevent the blood clots, but it's not the best one to protect the heart against heart disease. And 90% of women will die from heart disease. And it's the oral estradiol in every study that shows protection against that heart disease.
Yeah.
And the transdermal, as you well know, does not protect against the heart disease in the comparative studies. So we're using something to prevent the blood clots, but we're not realizing that by doing so, we're really not preventing the cardiovascular disease that's killing 90% of women, and we forego that beneficial effect if we just use that transdermal. And the reason we use the transdermal is because everyone says we should, and that's what everyone reads. But unfortunately, they don't know the comparative studies like you do that showed that the transdermal did not have any effect on lipids or lipoproteins or apolipoproteins or fibrinogen or outcome studies. It was only the oral estradiol that reduces heart attacks and strokes. In the outcome studies, it was not the transdermal that everyone uses. But everyone doesn't understand that because they don't have as much insight into the studies and literature that you do because you've taken the courses. So as a result, that's why I use oral. But if somebody says, no, you're wrong, you got to use, and I say, as you well know, okay, you can use transdermal, but please, somebody out there, please show me the study where using oral estradiol increases the risk of heart attack, strokes, or blood clots. Show me just one study. Well, as you well know, A4M, as well as PCCA, the two organizations that teach and train doctors or pharmacists, only use transdermal, and they say that I'm wrong. And they say that, there is one study. There is a study. See, Rouzier is wrong. There is that one study that did show that taking oral estradiol was harmful and caused an increase in blood clots. There's that one study. Okay, but what about the thousands of studies to show that there is no blood clots with oral estradiol? Well, we'll ignore all of those because of this one study. Well, as you know, that one study was really not a study. It was a retrospective review of an insurance database, which is a grade D as evidence. Randomized control trials are grade A. Those are what you hang your hat on. Those are the ones that are reliable. Grade D is pretty much worthless. So there's one worthless retrospective review of an insurance database where they were given a prescription. We don't know if they took it. We don't know if they didn't take it. We don't know if they took something different. All we know is that they were given a prescription for it. And they went back and reviewed the insurance data for 20 years, and they found an increase in blood clots for those that were given a prescription. So it wasn't taking the oral estradiol that caused the clot. It was the fact that they got the prescription. It's grabbing that prescription that caused that blood clot. Well, PCCA and A4M will teach that. And it's like, it's a grade D study. It wasn't a randomized trial. All the randomized trials and all the NIH studies where they use oral estradiol do not show any risk of blood clots in any randomized control trial at all. But they want to take that one grade D evidence to sort of hang their hat on and ignore all the randomized control trials. And of course, when I show them this, they just put the tail between the legs and walk away because they don't have a rebuttal as to, okay, if it caused the blood clots, then what randomized control trial showed blood clots? Show me those studies. And in 20 years, no one can show me one single solitary study that showed that oral estradiol caused blood clots or heart attack or a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, as you know, the randomized controlled trials actually show the relative risk is 0.8, which means there was actually
Lower.
a decreased risk of clots with oral estradiol in contrast to oral Premarin, which is a completely different animal. So
Don't you think it's interesting though, Neal, that like those grade D studies is what people hear about more so than double-blind placebo-controlled trials?
Oh yeah, well sure, and that's unfortunately the grade D studies, which we know were completely unreliable, and to counteract that grade D study where there was an increase in blood clots with estradiol, there was a 20-year retrospective review in an insurance database published in the British Medical Journal that showed just the opposite. Estradiol decreased blood clots, but it was a 20-year retrospective review of an insurance database, which is a grade D, and even that is unreliable, and that gets shredded, and that's worthless also, even though it shows the opposite.
We have these grade D studies. We have baseline studies that are different than interventional studies. And this is where people get so confused. Thanks to you, I understand all of these studies now. And I understand why baseline studies can warrant completely different results than an outcome study. So I think that's why so many people get so confused about the literature.
Yeah, well, if the doctors don't understand it, how does the patient, know it? And of course, somebody will write something somewhere that you shouldn't use oral estradiol, it causes blood clots, yada, yada, yada. And the patient will read that and say, okay, I don't want that. I only want transdermal. Okay, that's what you're going to get. Here, we're going to give that to you. Oh, goody, because that's what I read, I heard. Okay, again, why'd you come to the expert? Well, because you're the expert. And then why don't you listen to the expert? Well, because that's not what I read or heard. Okay,
right.
Then why don't you want to believe the expert? Well, because that's not what I heard or read. Okay, well, what you read and heard was false. It's incorrect. But once you read it, it gets stuck in your brain, as you understand. That's a confirmation bias. Once you read it, and you read it first, your brain will latch onto it as this is true. And anything that you hear secondarily to that, the brain rejects as, no, that's not true. That's false. That's not what I heard or learned first. Even though what they heard and learned first was false, it'll stick in their brain as it must be true because I heard it first. And then anything that the brain hears later is going to be rejected as, no, it's false, which is why people have this confirmation bias against oral estradiol, because it's not what they heard or learned first, but there's no evidence, there's no randomized controlled trial, there's no interventional study, there's no NIH study. None of the studies in Europe where they only use estradiol showed any increased risk for a blood clot, heart attack, or strokes with oral estradiol. There's no study that shows harm, but everyone extrapolates and thinks, and there's no proof of it.
Right. And what's interesting to me, so the WHI study that, told everyone that risks outweigh the benefits came out in 2002. Before that, like in 1989, Dr. Hargrove proved that bioidentical progesterone protects the uterine lining as much as synthetic progestin. Like, why couldn't they have had an arm with bioidentical progesterone? That was known already going into that study.
Well, you have to ask that question because you want your audience to know and hear the answer. Okay. But you yourself know that because the WHI trial looked at Premarin and Provera. They didn't look at bioidentical hormones. They did not want to look at bioidentical hormones. The OBGYN world, the ACOG and NAMS medical societies for OBGYN medicine are against bioidentical hormones, of course, because they get sponsored by Pfizer, which makes Prem Pro. And as a result, you're not going to see in the United States many of these studies utilizing estradiol or progesterone. You will only see Premarin and Provera. But now that the studies are so negative with Premarin and Provera, you're probably not going to see any more studies because it's not going to be with Premarin and Provera. It's going to be with estradiol, but estradiol is generic and it's a bioidentical hormone, which the OBGYN academies are against because of their bias, because they're sponsored by Wyeth that makes Prem Pro. And as a result, they will not promote the bioidentical hormones, despite the fact that all of the literature and data shows safety and efficacy and preference to the synthetic hormones. All the studies should be estradiol and progesterone. All the European studies now are estradiol and progesterone, not Prem Pro. But here in the United States, no, because of the OBGYN academies that are heavily funded by the drug company that makes Prem Pro, and therefore you will not see it promoted or held in high regard by the OBGYN academies, which is too bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, really too bad. Such bold statements. Even like NP thyroid. One of my patients is the rep for NP thyroid, and he said the reason CVS won't carry it is because they don't get kickbacks from the drug companies. Like, I didn't even know all of that was going on. And he said, if we don't give kickbacks, they won't carry our drug.
Well, it's not quite that simple. CVS can carry it if you specifically want it, you can ask CVS to order it, and the pharmacist can order it to be carried at CVS pharmacy. But what you're not telling the listeners is that, unfortunately, Armour Thyroid, which was the first desiccated thyroid that was so popular and has been used for 100 years, the price skyrocketed extremely high, and as a result, Armour Thyroid is pretty much not available because the insurances won't pay for it because it's so expensive. But they will pay for NP Thyroid, which is much cheaper.
Yeah.
Well, why did Armour Thyroid get so expensive? The reason that Armour Thyroid got so expensive was because Neal Pharmaceuticals, the maker of Synthroid, which is a synthetic T4, bought Armour Thyroid.
I did not know that.
Oh yeah, through the subsidiary company of Allergan. Allergan bought Armour Thyroid. They couldn't have Neal Pharmaceuticals buy it because it would look too bad. So Neal Pharmaceuticals, instead of having them buy Armour Thyroid to shut it down, Allergan, their subsidiary, bought it. And as a result, the price went up to $10 a tablet for Armour Thyroid, which pretty much put Armour Thyroid off the market because insurance wouldn't pay for it because it was too expensive. But in addition, what happened before that was Neal Pharmaceuticals went to Caremark and all these other insurance companies and said, hey, you're paying $1 a tablet for Synthroid. We will sell it to you for 25 cents a tablet. You will save 75 cents a tablet, and you will then save millions of dollars in purchasing Synthroid from us. As a result of you saving millions of dollars, and you got to be on board with this. If you're going to save yourself millions of dollars, what we want you to do is to send out a letter to every patient that is on Armour Thyroid and tell them and their doctor to get off of Armour Thyroid and to use only Synthroid. Well, guess what? The letter went out. Of course, those of us that prescribe Armour Thyroid look at it and laugh and throw it in the trash. The patients throw it in the trash. The doctors throw it in the trash. But Neal Pharmaceuticals was still trying to make that last-ditch effort to get rid of Armour Thyroid because Armour Thyroid was taking over a big piece of their profit and a big piece of the action. And as a result, they tried to get rid of Armour Thyroid. Well, they couldn't get rid of Armour Thyroid because the sales kept going higher and higher and higher. The only way to get rid of them is to buy them.
Yep.
So they bought them.
Yeah.
And when they bought them, they controlled the price. The price went to $10 a tablet.
Yeah.
So Armour Thyroid went by the wayside. Well, NP Thyroid now is a bioidentical natural thyroid that is available, but it's not really that big of a company that it can provide NP Thyroid to all pharmacies that are out there. So a pharmacy can carry it, they can use it, but they have to specifically request it.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just the compounding pharmacies that carry NP Thyroid. And of course, doctors' offices can also carry NP Thyroid. So that's a little spiel on, why NP? Well, it's just as good as Armour, but it's just not a big company like Armour. It just hasn't grown big enough. They just don't have the capacity to make that many NP Thyroid tablets to stock, every pharmacy out there. So the pharmacies typically will not carry it unless you specifically ask for it.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that, Neal. Thank you.
Yeah, they can carry it. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. So maybe we should end it here, but I want to have you back on when.
Oh, we don't have to end it.
I know. When another story on testosterone causing blood clots comes out. Okay. That'll be our next show.
Yeah. Testosterone does not cause blood clots.
Sorry. I know. But when that comes out, Neal, I'm going to have you back on to talk about it.
Okay. No, sure. I'm happy to. That'd be fine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, each hormone in itself is like a webinar in itself. Estradiol and estrogen is a webinar. Progesterone is not Provera is a webinar. Natural progesterone does not cause cancer, protects against cancer. Provera increases cancer. Progesterone does everything you want it to do. It's very, very safe and efficacious. Provera is a synthetic chemically altered hormone that causes blood clots, heart attacks, and strokes, and breast cancer. It should never be used. NP Thyroid is the thyroid of choice, but the thyroid organizations say, no, don't use it, only use T4. And as a result, patients are on T4 and they can't lose weight and they don't feel good and they're still fatigued. But my doctor says, well, you keep doing what your doctor says. And when you want to fix that and reverse it, as you well know, then come back, we'll prescribe it for you, and then you'll lose the 20 pounds and you'll feel so much better and your fatigue will be gone. But my doctor says, don't tell your doctor.
I know one of my patients who has an endocrinologist, they didn't like my T3, T4 levels, thyroid levels.
Yeah.
And And he says, why are you taking this? And she said, because she feels great. And she didn't feel good on Synthroid. And he said, why not? And she said, I just couldn't lose weight. I had no energy. And he said, just let her prescribe your thyroid then.
Yeah.
So
Finally, there's a breath of fresh air.
yeah.
There is a spark of good in Ringo. But yeah, most of the endocrinologists will not step across that boundary because, they're afraid of what their peers think. And they're afraid of, the thyroid organizations that are constantly telling them, don't prescribe desiccated thyroid or T3. You don't need it. It doesn't work, but everyone that's on it feels great.
Yeah. They would never go back to Synthroid. Yeah. Never.
And all the studies show that they feel great. And then, well, why do the endocrinologists do it? You have to understand the politics and economics of the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
To understand why they don't like estradiol, why they don't like natural progesterone, why they don't like testosterone, and why they don't like natural thyroid. It's all politics and economics at its finest.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's sad, but we're able to run, with this, help our patients, Neal, and not be afraid of the big, FDA, CDC.
Yeah.
Can't be afraid of that.
But as you and I know, most of our doctors, our colleagues, are not happy with medicine. You and I can't wait to go to the office to practice medicine because it's fun, because we make our patients feel better, function better, and we change their lives. And they come back and say, thank you for changing my life. Thank you for giving me back my husband. Thank you for giving me back my wife. Thank you for making us feel better. Thank you for doing all this for us. And now do you still want to go to your doctor? No. You still believe this is harmful and your doctor scared you? They said, we don't understand why they did that. Well, if the doctor's not up on it, they're down on it. And it's politics and economics. And the patients really can't get over that. Why would their doctor do that? It wasn't really true. Yeah. Why would they say that?
Yeah.
It wasn't true.
Yeah, I could say for anybody out there, any doctors listening who might want to learn the research on hormone replacement therapy, the only place to go is to WorldLink Medical and to study with Dr. Neal Rouzier. He's the only one who practices the research, who teaches the research, who doesn't care about opinions because the research speaks for itself. And my practice mimics exactly what the research tells us about prevention, quality of life enhancement. So Dr. Rouzier, it has been awesome having you. I cannot wait to have you back when that new article comes out.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. It was a pleasure as always.
I really love you, Neal. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Theresa. We'll see you next time.
You too.
All right.
Bye-bye, Neal.
Bye-bye.